Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am very excited to bring this class to you. Thank you, Helen, for bringing it up in our group. It's just, I mean, we can be here for, I like to keep these classes a half-hour tops, just to really give us a taste and to take in the content that we learn. Just that, right? But it's like we could be here for 3 hours on this topic. So let's dive in. You may have heard the phrase, you are either in fear or you are in love. I like to replace the word love with harmony. Yes, so someone accidentally unmuted. Hello, and admit Jan. Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. So yeah, I like to replace the word love with harmony, because I feel like I want to be looking at not its opposite, because the opposite of fear could be courage as well, right? Good morning, Jan. Just gonna go ahead and mute you. But I like this word harmony, and the reason why, and there's a great writer. He wrote the work Siddhartha. His name is Hermann Hesse, and he also wrote a book called Demian. And what he writes, there's a phrase in that book that I'm going to share with you. And the quote is, "You are only afraid if you are not in harmony with yourself." Right? This idea that when there is discord, when there is this almost as if you were outside yourself or beside yourself, when we are not in balance, when we are not in harmony, when we are not honoring ourselves, right? We can more easily, we'll say, more easily be in fear. So in this class, we will seek to find a little bit of that harmony. Admit. Welcome, welcome. All right, so how do we find harmony? One thing I would say is we don't push it away. We don't push fear away. We have to really be with it. We have to sit with it. I like to befriend it. I like to befriend my fears. Right? Just like I would a close friend, I like to listen to what it has to say. Okay. Some of you were in my brain and pain class. We talked about this acceptance when it comes to pain, and this befriending when it comes to pain. We sit with it. We don't push it away. We do the very same thing with fear. Hello, hello. Good, good. Okay, good. I'm just keeping you all muted, keeping my eye on the side. You may have also heard that fear is false evidence appearing real. And I think this couldn't be further from the truth. I don't think it's accurate at all. If you are fearful of something, it's real for you. And I want to honor that. I want to honor that in myself. I want to honor that as a friend. I want to honor that in my clients. If someone has a fear, I'm going to be there for you and I'm going to honor it. Even if part of my brain thinks like, that's funny, I would never find that fearful. I want to get rid of that as soon as possible, right? It doesn't matter what I think is fearful. It's a matter of where somebody is at and how do I meet them and how can I be there for them, like I would a good friend. Okay. So let's look at the causes and the origins of fear before we dive in. So the causes are simple, right? It's either going to be a real event, right? I am fearful because of this real thing. And that could be political, environmental, social, right? It's a real moment, a real event. Or it could be an imagined moment, an imagined event, right? Something that I imagine if I say this in this particular relationship, this person's going to do that. And that brings me fear. Because, and usually there's a timeline to it, right? In the past, when I've said something like that, I've gotten hit, right? There's something in there. There's some reason for the fear, right? So we acknowledge that imagined feelings of fear are also real feelings of fear. They're one of the same thing, okay? And when they're manifested, even as a thought, it exists on a timeline. It's either going to be now or in the future, right? Usually. I imagine you could also move to the past and remember something that happened and get into that state of fear, right? That's true too. But usually the ones that are most kind of pressing to deal with are going to be the ones that are in the moment or in the future. Okay, so let's see. So I want to look at the kind of fear, and this is what Helen, you were talking about, like, how do I be present for a client that has debilitating fear, right? Obsessive fear, this kind of imaginary fear, the fear that doesn't serve them. How do we deal with this? I would say absolutely, you guys maybe anticipate me even saying this. I am not a doctor. So if someone really is dealing with a debilitating fear that is quite dangerous to themselves or others, they could harm themselves or harm others, absolutely, they must seek some medical care or assistance. So my little cat is doing exercises over there. The pleasures of being at home with kitties. Okay, so the type of fear that we're referring to today, right? This almost more obsessive or debilitating fear, it can hold more emotional weight, right? This type of fear oftentimes also has history, right? It's like that person sees the writing on the wall and they like run for the hills, right? And this leads us to the origins of fear, right? The history, when it happened. So our fears originate from somewhere. So when looking at our fear, or at a client's fear, or a friend's fear, or a stranger's fear, we must have incredible compassion because it comes from somewhere. It comes from a real place. So with incredible kindness, we proceed, right? So if somebody has a fear of, and this kind of gets into phobias maybe, but if someone has a fear of ghosts or of spiders, or of a small space, for instance, that comes from somewhere, right? Something they experienced. They saw a movie. I remember when I was a kid, seeing a very scary movie and having kids do a very scary thing in a bathroom with me. It was like all in good fun, but it terrified me. And to this day, I will not watch a scary movie because it'll make it not just that I'm fearful in the moment. I won't be able to sleep all night long. The fear will keep me up all night long. So if somebody is fearful, it's coming from a place. That place doesn't necessarily even have to be this lifetime, right? We see this in that incredible work. If you've read it, I think it's wonderful. It's a short little book. I think I still have it. I tend to give away the books that I love to people. It's called Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss, right? He's and this is talking about someone who would be hypnotized to get rid of their fear. So for instance, someone has a fear of drowning, they become hypnotized and experience that experience again, and it has something shift within them, right? So that can be very, very helpful. And that book, if you haven't read it, like I said, is pretty impactful. It's been around for a long time, sold millions of copies. It's quite tremendous. So why is it that if somebody does hypnosis, or if someone starts doing tapping, EFT, or shifts their gaze, or does a rhythmic gesture as they're having the thought, why is it that that same fear can dissipate? What's going on in the body that by doing this simple gesture, looking side to side, or doing tapping, or slapping the thighs rhythmically side to side, changing the eye focus, why is it then that if they experience a great fear emotion in their mind, as they start to do this thing, it dissipates, or they still have the memory of it, but it's not as fearful? So this has a lot to do with our brain. So we're going to be looking at the brain today. We're going to dive into self-care tools soon. I know I'm talking a lot at the fore, but we're going to dive into the self-care tools soon. This has to do with the brain. And my friend and I were talking about this the other day, and he said it really simply. He's like, yeah, you got the stuff, the fear back here, right? The reptilian brain, the lizard brain. It's actually the midbrain, right? This is the thing that happened. He's like, you just got to bring it up here. You got to bring it up to the reasoning brain, right? How do you do that? You can do it with methods like hypnosis, or with EFT, tapping, shifts in focus, that sort of thing. And it doesn't have to be all woo-woo, right? I have a chapter in one of my books. The chapter is called "I'm in Such a Pickle." And I'm making light of it, but it's really something you could do in a moment of fear, in a moment of emotional upheaval within, that is residing within, that maybe even has nothing to do with anybody. How do you just shift your gaze, right? how do you just, I mean, the way I put it is like, just start making pickles. And I think there's even a recipe in the book, if I remember right. I put a recipe in there. Just start making pickles, right? Shift your gaze. Oftentimes when we're in a moment of fear, pain, trauma, etc., our gaze is fixed. How many times have you experienced yourself or seen somebody else like this, just so distraught and so within themselves? If we could just shift our focus, we have this, it's a glimmering light, a glimmering hope. We come outside of ourselves and we can see another perspective. Okay. So, all right, let's see. As I mentioned before, fear is our friend. I also want to mention one more thing and one more story, and then we'll dive in, I swear. So fear is our friend. It can come to assist. We don't want to eradicate fear. Fear is essential. I've brought up in some of my classes before the story of the amygdala, right? Or the amygdalae in our brain. There have been studies over the years. They've done it a lot with monkeys, and they were able to see it in one woman, that when the amygdala is damaged or removed, that the feeling of fear is also removed, because the amygdala, that part of the brain, the amygdala, it detects fear. So if it's removed or damaged, one no longer has fear, which is very dangerous, as they saw with that woman, because she could be walking around in the park in the middle of the night and have no fear, right? So fear serves us. I was a cab driver, like 20 some odd years ago, over 20 years ago now, in San Francisco, California. And I was in a situation where two guys got in the car. They gave me a destination. I knew the moment they got in the car, the very moment, that I was going to be robbed. I could just tell everything already. My blood was flowing, my eyes were dilating already. My adrenaline was at work. Already my amygdala was like, oh my God, right? Something's going to happen. I knew it. And it did. I ended up, long story short, with a knife at my neck and a knife at my leg. And give me all your money, right? Now, because my amygdala detected danger, it did its job. Thank you, amygdala. It was like, I'm detecting danger. I need to talk to somebody about it. And so it starts to talk to the other parts of the brain, right? It's going to now talk to the thalamus is going to start to process stuff. The hypothalamus is like, all right, I'm on it. We're going to tell the pituitary to talk to the adrenals, and the adrenals are going to start to pump some adrenaline, some cortisol, some epinephrine, right? We're going to get those eyes dilated. We're going to dilated. We're going to get the blood flowing. We're going to get some blood in your muscles so you can fight or flee. And I fled. I was able to, again, long story short, I was able to maneuver and get out of there, right? Thank you to my fear. So fear saved my life. So fear in this way is not what we're eradicating today. We're not doing self-care tools to get rid of fear or to calm the amygdala. We're, if anything, and we know this, some of you are reflexologists, you know this, that we're bringing the body back to homeostasis. We're not touching something and making it so that we're calming it down per se, right? We're bringing it back to balance, which means that we trust our body and we know our body knows what to do, right? If we are applying pressure to that mini map, right, we know that that area is being brought back to homeostasis and moving balance. Okay, what we're trying to eradicate is the moment after a moment like that, where the fear served us, like Pavlov's dog. I can't ever be around guys that look like that again. I will never drive a car again. You guys, some of you, I just told you I don't drive, but it's not because of that, right? I can never drive a car again. I can never walk down that street again. Right? This is the kind of fear that we want to eradicate, because it's fear that haunts us. It doesn't serve us, right? We want to recover from that event. Hypnosis did help me in that scenario tremendously. It was amazing. It helped 100%. So that was something that helped me. And that's something that if somebody comes to you with incredible fear, might be something that you offer they research, right? So fear is good. It is not false evidence appearing real. It is very real for the person. The trick is to know when it's real danger and when it is not. So let's dive into some self-care. Okay. So we're going to begin with a mudra, which I love my mudras. You know, if you've been in these, in my mini classes or in my Sunday classes, I often bring in mudras, because they're a simple hand gesture that can ignite so much within. Okay, so this is the Kali Mudra, K-A-L-I, the Kali Mudra. Okay, all you do is take your hands and interlace your fingers. If you'd like, you could put your thumbs, the left thumb, place it on top of the right thumb. That's recommended. I feel either is okay. The left thumb on top is a little bit more uncomfortable for me today, so I'm going to try that just because. And then all you do is extend your pointer fingers like that. This is the Kali Mudra. This is something in a yoga class, if you've taken a yoga class, if they're like, let's breathe in and go into warrior pose. It's very possible that you brought up your hands and you met your hands in prayer and did this gesture, right? This is the Kali Mudra. Very, very good for bringing in that fierce strength, that knowingness, that power within, right? So when feelings of inadequacy, when feelings of I can't do this, or I feel like I'm going to be judged, those types of fear, when courage is called for, when strength is called for, I encourage you to try this mudra. You can do it just at the level of your solar plexus of your heart. All right, you could just fold it in your lap and make it really, really simple, relaxing your shoulders and just making it easy. And then try it when we're not in class, try it on your own, right? See what it's like to breathe in, to ignite it in motion and see if that works for you. And whatever feels like it resonates the best, try that again and again, right? So again, it could be at the level of your heart. It could be just on your lap, easy breezy. I like easy breezy, so I would do the lap and just close my eyes or lower my gaze in the morning. Great way to start the day, right? If I'm somebody, and I believe everybody has a dominant fear. A dominant emotion within them. Generally one that is so-called negative and one that is so-called positive. My so-called negative emotion that I have is fear. That is the one that I get the most. And we'll look at the kidneys a little bit later in traditional Korean medicine, traditional Chinese medicine too. The kidneys house fear, right? I've had kidney stones before. Kidneys I have to be mindful of, right? So we'll end the day with a Taoist exercise for kidneys. So you can try the mudra, that's one. Number two, we're gonna do reflexology because reflexology is great. And we're gonna look at the brain. We're gonna look at the brain and the adrenals. We're gonna do a couple areas, but mostly we're gonna do the brain, okay? I mentioned earlier about the lizard brain or the reptilian brain, right? This is like cerebellum, brainstem. This is that area that in part collectively has a lot to do with involuntary actions, right? The heart rate, the body temperature, the blood pressure, circulation, breathing, things like this, involuntary stuff. The medulla oblongata, also, it's part of the brainstem. It in part, medulla oblongata, in part, also releases adrenaline. It outputs some adrenaline, not just your adrenals do that, right? So we're going to tend to the medulla as well. The limbic system, right? We're going to look at the amygdala. We're going to look at the limbic system, the amygdala, the hippocampus, the cingulate gyrus, the basal ganglia. There's a lot of stuff in there. I'll show you a picture as well so you can see it. The cingulate gyrus is above the corpus callosum, which is involved in processing fear, emotion, pain, etc. And it's beautiful from the side view. It's like that beautiful long arch if you've seen a brain from the side view. I'll show it to you from a front view. So we're going to do it for self-care because oftentimes I feel like if somebody's experiencing fear, they might not be with you. They might not be with a friend. They might not be with a practitioner. It can come when they're alone in their quietest hours. So doing self-care for fear, I think is good. And if you know somebody who has fear, you can show them some of these techniques so that they have something in their tool bag when they're fearful, right? Okay, so what you're going to be doing is creating a hook. Now, I usually do this technique. I'm using my bone here, right? I'm using this bone, and reflexology, we often press and hold. Some people press and slide. Other people do a kind of caterpillar-like motion in thumb or finger walking. There are different ways to get into the tissue and to get to the reflexology areas and points. I like this, I call it like a bottle cap technique or a hook, because I can apply pressure to one area. This is me holding the backside lightly. And then I'm using this bone to literally twist my bottle cap. So I usually do this gesture when I'm teaching about the neck, right? I want someone to go around the entire circumference of the neck so you can keep it in place, apply pressure, and using that bone, you twist. It makes it so you go a little bit deeper too, but not too deep. You still get to control your pressure. So usually we would do the bottle cap technique in areas like the brain. How simple too, because we can go around all of our fingers in this way very, very quickly, right? In this way, and this is different from the tilting I usually do, which I think some of you know. Instead of tilting, we do the bottle cap shape, hold the back side, and we're going to hold it to the mid area of the thumb. Okay. Most people know, beginning and advanced reflexologists, that the pituitary, at least in the singular view, is going to be right smack in the middle. Right? So we can start there, but we can also come a little bit side to side. Right? And then we're going to get into other structures. So I mentioned your corpus callosum has millions and millions, hundreds of millions of nerve fibers, right? Which are connecting the two hemispheres. That's what it's doing, right? It's connecting the two hemispheres, the right and the left side of the brain. Signals need to happen so they can communicate side to side, just like signals need to happen to communicate any part of the brain to itself, to each other, right? So we're going to be, like for instance, like I said, the amygdala, right? It's freaking out. It's really fearful of something real or imagined. It's real for the amygdala. It then sends a message, right? Thalamus starts processing, then it goes to the reasoning brain. So this is what we're actually doing when we apply pressure here. Okay, so we're literally beginning at the center, and we're just doing a back and forth motion using that bone of this finger to apply pressure to all of the structures, thinking that corpus callosum, igniting the right and the left side of the brain, imagining, sensing, knowing that there is greater connection between both hemispheres. Honoring too, right, that there are different parts of the brain that are doing their job, right, to communicate with each other. You can start to even go to the top part. If you'd like, you could switch to a pressing gesture like you would if you were thumb or finger walking. In this way, you're getting to the prefrontal cortex, the reasoning brain. So when we start at the bottom with the bottle cap, we're looking at what has happened, the fear, what's like all that generation. And then we move up, 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 and we're sending it to the front part of the brain. Okay. Now, when the amygdala, and by the way, all these words, if you're listening to me and you're like, this makes no sense, too many long words, just think of it like, well, first of all, just do the gesture. Just do this area using this technique, applying pressure to the top. Just knowing that you're dealing with parts of the brain that have to do with your fear and how to make it so it can move from a fearful state to a more reasonable state to calm you down. That's all you need to know. Forget the long words, right? So you're doing that. As we are doing that, we know also that amygdala is part of, when that fear arises, it's going to interact with what is called the HPA axis, right? So it's going to be interacting with the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and then the adrenals. Oh, welcome, Kotan. So as you're doing that, after you've finished all of that, you want to then give a direct attention to the thalamus. Good morning, Kotan. Thank you for coming. I just muted you. Welcome. Good to see you.
Sorry, I am in the car.
Oh, that's okay.
I just wanted to join
like
you real quick.
You'll have a video later. We just finished doing the brain, and we're now moving into the point technique, right? So we just moved through corpus callosum. We did both hemispheres. We really paid attention to that amygdala. We were focusing on the intention of what we wanted to do. And now we just simply go hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal, right? So, as I was mentioning before, right? Amygdala freaks out. It then goes, thalamus starts a process. Hypothalamus is like, we're going to do something about it. It sends a message to pituitary. Pituitary is like, I'm on it. I'm going to send the message for adrenals to produce, adrenaline, cortisol, and get things moving. When you're on the adrenal, and this is the last thing I'll say as we move into the next self-care technique, the adrenals have two parts, an inner portion and an outer portion. The inner portion is the medulla, and the outer portion is the cortex. I want you to focus, so this has a lot more to do with intention, that you're in the inner portion of the adrenal, right? That inner portion is producing hormones for the fight and flight response, right? So this is adrenaline type hormones, epinephrine, norepinephrine, sympathetic nervous system. Right? So you're using your mind to think about actually being on the inside, the medulla. Okay. I'm going to share my screen briefly to show you that part of the brain. It's going to be in the toe, but it's easy enough to think that it's also the thumb. But I want to just show you before we move on. Dun, 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 dun. All right. So share screen. All right, so this is our map. This is the thumb, right? So I had you course through the amygdala here, or amygdalae, right? Because there's actually two of them, right? So when you go in that hook-like gesture, side to side, how perfect that you're going from one hemisphere to the other, right? And you're going to one amygdala to the other. An amygdalae, right? Or the hippocampi as well. You're moving up through here, past the pituitary, into the hypothalamus, thalamus, and then now you're in the very, very tip into that prefrontal cortex. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share so we could move on. I want to honor your time, and I always like to keep it under, I always say I try to do a half hour, but usually it's under 40 minutes. So let's move on to the next one, and then I'll open for questions, okay? So next you have hands and heart. So, and your breath. So you're gonna use your breath, use your hands, use your heart. The best way I find to calm myself for self-care is to use universal position in Reiki. So that means I take one of my palms and I simply place it on my heart, and I take my other palm and I place it on my solar plexus. And I literally just relax my elbows, relax my shoulders, lower my gaze, and breathe. If this still feels like shaky and that it's not working, I say to myself, if possible, aloud. You could do it in your head too, but it's even better. It becomes a mantrum, right? It becomes stronger if you utter the words. So the words are, this is real. As if to say, this body, this person, this moment here now, this is real. Right? So you're bringing it out of the head and the chaos of that fear and bring it into the heart, right? And the heart also vibrating and bright, it vibrates at a very high frequency. And we just stay there. If you know Byron Katie, you know she has those great 4 questions. If you like to employ your reasoning brain, if you're good at it in moments of fear, her 4 questions are great. And I find the first 2 are just enough. The first one is simply, is it true? Right? I'm in a car, I'm racing down the freeway, somebody cuts me off. Is it true? And I say to myself, what a jerk. Oh my God, he's so mean. He does that all the time. I have this whole story attached, right? And everything's pumping inside of me because he could have like really hurt me. And now I'm fearful too, right? So I'm emotional, I'm angry, and I'm fearful. Is it true? I don't know if it's true that he's angry and mean and does it all the time, right? Can I absolutely know it's true? This is Katie's second question. I can't, right? In this way, if we could continually bring ourselves back down to reality, that too can help if you're able to do that. She wrote a book called Loving What Is years ago. And there is a passage in there that says, I am a lover of what is, not because I'm a spiritual person, because it hurts when I argue with reality. So this idea of being able to bring it in and not fight reality and just kind of be more present with what is. Next up, next exercise is going to be looks and lobes, we'll call it, right? You're going to be using your hands as well. We're talking about the lobes of the brain, and the looks are what you're doing with your eyes, with your gaze, okay? So right now, think of something that makes you fearful, okay? Something that brings you fear, and it could be just a conversation that you have to have, something you know is on the docket. You're going to have to be in front of people, go to a gathering, anything at all, something that brings you fear, or it could be more of a phobia if you'd like. Okay, with your non-dominant hand, you're going to place the palm right at the occipital ridge, right? You're thinking, feeling midbrain, right? Right at the level of above the spinal cord, midbrain, dominant hand on the forehead, right? I want you to imagine fear, much like you would in a cartoon, right? It's something you watch from the outside. So fear is actually a thing that originated back here, and you're going to see it there. And with your imagination, you're going to bring it forward through your brain to the dominant hand, to your forebrain, your reasoning brain, your prefrontal cortex. You're going to send the fear there and give it over to your prefrontal cortex. There's different scenery there. Let it hang out. And don't forget to breathe. Now with your fingertips, you're going to do a kind of gesture of rubbing. This is the interhemispheric fissure, also known as the medial longitudinal fissure, right? You know, I love the grooves and the sulcus and the gyri. I love all the parts of the brain. We're just gonna, you know, the other two hemispheres, we're gonna just rub in between, right? Separating the two cerebral hemispheres. Then place our palms on the lobes, the two hemispheres, igniting and imagining that there is greater balance within our brain. And now bring it down to the temporal lobes. And finally, rest your elbows on your desk in front of you or your lap and place the palms of your hands on your eyes and simply palm your eyes and know you have nothing to do, nowhere to go, and nobody to be. Know that this fear can dissipate here, that you are just present in this moment. And you're safe. Allow that to fall away. You could rub your head, which I always like to do after, or wipe after. I just had a memory as I was there. One thing I wanted to say when you're doing that reflexology, as you do that gesture here, and then point, 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 also bring it around here. Sometimes as we start to apply pressure to these structures, even just emotionally, what might be going on inside as you're dealing with those structures, there might be a tightening at the jaw, at the level of the jaw. So take that bone and use it to force around from one side of the base of the nail to the other and detail that lower and upper jaw. Okay. All right. So I'm going to leave you with two things and then we're going to open for questions to see if there's anything that wasn't clear or any questions at all. So two things I want to leave you with. One is this idea of allowance or acceptance, right? So, you know, for instance, I was preparing for the Camino de Santiago years and years ago. And what I discovered as in preparation is I was fearful to lie on my back and sleep. The reason why this even came up is because I knew that once I was on the Camino, I would be in churches, I would be outside camping, and I'd be on my back, very vulnerable to the elements and to others that I didn't know. And it brought immense fear. I don't know where this fear comes from, but it was profound. I lived in an apartment in New York City that had a double, triple lock thing. And when I was going to sleep every night, preparing for the Camino de Santiago, and what I mean by preparation is I was going to sleep with the sun, waking up with the sun, hiking every day. I was really preparing. When I would go to sleep at night, I couldn't lay on my back. So what I did, and this isn't for everybody, but it worked for me, is I literally put myself in a position where I said, I am safe. And I lied on my back, and I actually took off layers of clothing, and I allowed myself to feel the fear and be with it. You know, it takes 21 days to create a habit. It takes 90 days to break a habit. It takes 21 days to create one. So in this moment, what I was doing, and it actually only took about 5 days for me to really sense my body and realize nothing bad's going to happen. And also, if anything bad ever did happen, nothing can ever touch my soul, right? So that's one, allowance. Never put yourself in danger, but if there's something in your mind that is bringing you fear, there are things you can do in the privacy of your home that can help to eradicate and soften that fear. The Taoist exercise, the last thing we'll do today, is taking the palms of your hands and placing them on your kidneys. To do this, you could either be sitting where you are or standing and leaning forward. I'm on my kidneys now, my hands are. You could have also generated heat between your palms like that if you wanted to. And then with light fists, you simply pound gently the kidneys, right? So from this little arc to C, I'm just pounding my kidneys like this, right? This is the Taoist exercise. And release. So are there any questions, any illuminations, any possibilities? What are you thinking? Oh, Sophia had a question. What was your question, Sophia? You're amazing. Go ahead and unmute yourself. You were asking, oh, about the book name. Oh God, I named a couple books. Let's see. Well, there's my book. The one where I talk about making pickles is called Something New Every Day, Letting Your Imagination Take Flight. It's getting you to do new things, get out of your comfort zone, build, you know, change up that neuroplasticity. It's on Amazon. If you look under my name, Chantel C. Lucier, all my books are there. Byron Katie, her book was, oh wait, there was another book too. Oh, I also talked about Hermann Hesse, Demian. He's the one who wrote Siddhartha. That was the quote, "You're only afraid if you're not in harmony with yourself." Another book I brought up was Byron Katie's book. And Loving What Is the book I had that I drew the quote from, but she has quite a few, and she's a fun to watch, magnetic human, very simple insights. So she has the 4 questions. I think that's it. What you said. All right, are there any other questions before we depart into our day? I can't see all of you, but if there's anything at all, just unmute yourself. How does that feel, Helen?
Yeah, that's good. I think one of my clients who has acute anxiety and has had for many, many years, partly because of things that happened to her in her previous life, in her youth. She talks about when she's well, she's fine. And then suddenly this terrible acute anxiety will come and she gets these dreadful intrusive thoughts, which are very destructive. And when she's well, she can't even imagine why. But obviously when she's in this state, she can't think of anything else, and they're completely debilitating. So we have found that the reflexology does help, and I do work, having watched some of your work, I have been really working a lot on over the brain area, and that does seem to help, and the adrenals. And I just wondered if there was anything else really that I can do for her, apart from, you know, what we've suggested. I will have to watch this again because I haven't absorbed all of it. But yes, I do feel for her, and I do feel, as I've said, you know, I do want to make this a specialism because I personally understand about depression and anxiety, having experienced it myself, and therefore I know how crap it is, and feel that I would like to make it better, and sort of would want to acquire the tools where I can help people with it if I can. So
Absolutely.
and but I also think when I'm working, for example, because I have a faith, in my mind I do pray as well, and I ask for healing for my clients, and sort of trust really that happens. And a lot, I think, when people are in a very anxious state, holding can be very important. Just holding, not necessarily moving, but just holding.
I couldn't agree more. I really feel definitely holding. There are a few things that came to mind too. And well, one, I think it's always so important when someone has something that is that debilitating, to empower them, to show them something they do. Because there is something, when something is taking hold of somebody, we see this with almost like, you know, like possession, right? When things are taking hold, like a hungry ghost even, right? Like something is taking hold of somebody. There's something outside that is taking hold. And so when you give somebody something that empowers them, that they feel they have something of their own, it can be very powerful. So I would say even starting with one thing, teaching her the mudra that she does with her hands. I also have found crystal bowls, the singing bowls. When I had COVID last year, I had an anxiety that I've never had in my life to that degree. And it was the only, because I couldn't get a breath, it was the only thing that calmed me down, the singing bowls. And there's one on YouTube that is like 8 hours long, and it literally was the only thing that put me to sleep. So singing bowls, I would say. There was something else you said that was really, think. Oh, prayer. You know, I'm a fan of meditate. They say meditating is when you listen, and prayer is when you ask, right? And what I love about prayer, or what we can add to prayer, is the sentence, for the greatest good of all. Because I find sometimes this conversation has been a lot in the circle that I run with, and this conversation about like, oh, I really want to pray for them so that they're better. I really want to pray so that they don't feel this pain. But if we add for their greatest good, or the greatest good of all, it is very possible that the pain they're experiencing, or even this very debilitating fear, is for the greatest good for her and maybe for somebody else. Something happened recently to me, and I thought, this is so frustrating. I don't know what to do. And I reached out, I got help. And then somebody said back to me, now in the future, you'll be the guardian. You're going to help another woman who's going to be in your scenario that you didn't know what to do with, and you're going to be able to say the right thing. So there may be a reason why she has to go through with this too, on some other way, and that we give that to God as well, or the universe, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Thank you so much, Helen. I really appreciate you bringing this to the group, and yeah, please, yeah, just love and light to her and to you, and keep us posted.
Thank you too. Thank you.
All right, everybody, with love and light, I'm going to take a really quick look at this chat. Yes, watch the replay, because Jan, so good to see your face for that moment. Helpful information, good. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Jan. Would you tell, Susan asked, would you tell clients to work both thumbs for self-help? Absolutely. And actually, in self-help, Gloria, I actually say to work all fingers. I refer to it as the 10-headed dragon. I say you would just work all your fingers, all your 10 heads. So yes, it makes it easier for them too, to just work everything. But in that map, because most of you guys have heard me talk about how my maps are like the Mandelbrot set. It goes on and on and on and on. So it could either be just the brain in one, just the brain in two, the brain in two as one. It could be the brain in all. There are many possibilities there. So I say work all for self-care.
Awesome, Chantel. Thank you so much.
You're welcome so much. And Sophia,
Yeah.
namaste. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Lisbeth. How do you say your name? Lisbeth. Lisbeth.
Lisbeth?
Yeah, absolutely right. You said it spot on, Lisbeth.
Great to see your name. It's great to see your face today, not just your name. Much love.
Take care.
everybody. Have a
Bye.
wonderful evening and day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye, Chantel. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, bye.